You're watching a special edition of World Insight with me, Tian Wei, from St. Petersburg, Russia. Since the Russian Tsar Peter the Great founded the city 300 years ago, it became not only a window of Russia to Europe, but also a place in which the Russians have been translating their curiosity of the world in their own turf. A walk into the China Room of the Catherine Palace led to a discovery of how China was perceived by the Russians then. I was taken around the palace by Maria Rjadova and saw one after another examples of China in the eyes of Russians a few hundred years ago. Wow, so this is quite a place.
Yes, it's one of the Chinese interior in the Tsarskoye Selo Palace. Проектирован шотландским мастером.
Was designed by the Scottish architect
Чарльзом Камероном
Charles Cameron
для сына великой императрицы Екатерины II.
For the son of Catherine the Great.
Yeah, but why would they choose a Scottish one for a China room?
Потому что это было очень модно и популярно. Мы говорим о конце 18 века.
Late 18th century. It's very fashionable during the time. Besides the antiquity, also the Chinese lifestyle, chinoiserie.
К сожалению, во время Великой Отечественной войны этот интерьер сильно пострадал. И полностью был утрачен оригинальный китайский шелк, который дал название этому интерьеру. Голубая китайская гостиная.
Hence the name of the room, Blue Chinese Drawing.
That's right. So this is a reproduction.
Да, это восстановление послевоенное российскими мастерами.
Reproduction by Russian masters.
I mean, you're the chief architect of the museum. When you walk into this room, every time when you have a chance, what is this China at least represented in this room, by this room?
Но для меня это, конечно, такое европейское представление о Китае, которое было сделано по образцам, хотя и было основано, безусловно, на оригинальных элементах. Потому что помимо шелка здесь сохранились еще предметы декоративно-прикладного искусства. Это вазы и вазы на каминном зеркале.
And as a result of this, you did make a trip to China yourself.
Да, у меня был такой опыт. Однажды я была в Шанхае и Гуанчжоу, крупнейшей цивилизации, которая сохраняет свои истоки, которая сохраняет свои традиции и совершенно космической современной архитектурой. Такой скачок огромный в современной архитектуре и стать законодателями мод практически.
In the architecture and to be like the trendsetters of the modern fashion.
And you see now a lot of the interactions between China and Russia.
Туристы из Китая.
About 80% of visitors of our museum come from China.
И мне хотелось бы когда-нибудь,
Yes, we met some of them on our road here.
И мне хотелось бы когда-нибудь, чтобы в, например, запретном городе тоже было 50% посетителей из России.
Would be coming from Russia.
Well, that's quite a dream, I would say.
И для меня, как для архитектора, безусловно, интересны технологии и концепции восстановления и сохранения исторических зданий и интерьеров.
One would really wonder how we have come to these images about one another and why. Olga Taratynova, director of the State Museum-Preserve, tried her best to find answers to my questions. And I'm joined here by Olga. She's the director of the museum. Behind us is this very important architecture of your museum. Maybe Chinese architecture, but certainly Russian style.
Yes, this is a mix of Russian history and culture and Chinese history and culture, and it's not really the Russian architecture, but not Chinese architecture. The Chinese people who saw it, they say, no, it's not Chinese buildings. It's maybe Mongolian or something else.
Yes, but that's how the queen then was looking at China, right?
Yes.
In her imagination. And now you have so many Chinese guests visiting the museum every day.
In summer especially. And I think that about 5,000 Chinese guests every day in summer.
But sometimes it's also pressure for the museum because so many visitors want to come and take a look at the museum.
Yes, of course, it's even dangerous for people and for palace too, for interiors, because of temperature inside and some another dimensions. And 2 years ago we decided to determine how many people may be in palace in one moment.
If you think about this architecture, how Russians then imagined China, and then China, former Soviet Union, had a lot of exchanges. I guess your generation has a small glimpse of it. And now you are telling me your daughter going to China to study the Chinese language. It's amazing, isn't it?
She studied not only Chinese, but Vietnam language too. And I think that a lot of young people now in Russia try to study these East languages because it's very helpful in their future biography. And I think that a lot of Chinese people who visited Russia, they need for translating, they need for some understanding their mentality and our mentality. And it's good that young people try to be closer to another civilization.
So sometimes when you know another culture, you know your own culture better.
Of course. And this is, for example, this building, this complex, architectural complex, show us that this is the influence of East culture and a mix of Russian and Chinese culture in the 18th century. And it was a period which was very interesting for Russian, for European civilization, because China opened the borders, and at last, in the end of 17th and in the beginning of 18th century, European people saw the goods from China, wonderful porcelain, wonderful textile, for example, with a so bright design, and they became crazy in Europe. They tried to wear their clothes with Chinese ornaments, and they tried to do themselves porcelain with looks like a Chinese porcelain.
Yes, indeed.
And at last it influenced to the architecture. And everywhere in Europe, they decorate their halls, palaces in Chinese style, and they collect porcelain, and they did porcelain cabinets in every noble family palace.
I can see you're fascinated about this, that period of history.
I think that the mix of different civilizations, it has a good results.
As the director of one of the most well-known museums in St. Petersburg, you have been growing up, influenced by different cultures. I guess from the very end of the former Soviet Union until Russia, different stages of development in Russia, and today, obviously, Russia, with St. Petersburg, want to open up to the rest of the world.
Yes, and I think that the Russian has a special place in the world culture because we have a country, one board is with the European civilization and another board is with Chinese, Orient countries, and this is a very interesting place in the world culture. And this is architecture which looks like any mix of Chinese and Russian understanding of architecture. Catherine the Great, she is open for the European knowledge, was interested in European new styles. When the Europe was crazy about the Chinese culture, about the Chinese style, she began to study some designs of Chinese buildings, Chinese parks. She likes English parks, and Chinese parks look like English in foundation, because they have not regular plans and so on. A lot of common points between English landscapes and Chinese landscapes, and she began to study Chinese culture, Chinese books about the Chinese history, and decided to create in her lovely Tsarskoye Selo the same complex with the Chinese buildings. And the people from which works in palace, from the staff of this palace, in summer they removed from St. Petersburg to Chinese village and lived in these buildings.
Okay.
And every morning go to the palace for walking, for activity. For example, our famous writer Karamzin, historical writer, he lives here, and a lot of famous people was here in summer.
So behind the walls, there were a lot of stories, and a lot of stories of cultural exchanges, and how both in our imagination and in real life, other cultures inspire us. But you know, Olga, you know, that was the ancient times. Now you have a lot of things going on in the world, some challenges, opportunities as well. For example, in Russia, you talk about developing the Far East. You also talk about creating the Eurasian economic community. China talking about building the new Silk Road, both on land and in the sea. How will, you know, our spirit of exchanges in the past be able to inspire us to find new ways? You know, as a museum director, what do you think about that?
I think that our contacts and our changings connected with the Chinese country, Chinese people, they are like waves in the high and low. I remember the time when we don't be in the best communications with China. It's so pity, because I think that all the countries are interested, and all the countries in the world must be in communication.
So you think we are much smarter than we used to be? We together, China and Russia?
Anybody from different countries looking to our beautiful landscapes and or beautiful landscapes in China, they became better. They became clever. They became more kind for another country, for another people, and we became better.
Olga, what a pleasure meeting you here. All the best. Thank you so much.